Dante recently read an article in Harvard Business Review called Why Your Brain Loves Good Storytelling by Paul Zak. The article discussed an experiment in which learners watched or listened to a story where they empathized with a character overcoming a conflict. The results of the experiment showed that a neurochemical was produced in the brain which motivated them to want to help the character. Because of this, the learners were able to recall the details of the story better than just being presented information. Dante thinks this will help the team develop better training.
Kayla, I read an article in Harvard Business Review about brains and storytelling. Everyone has a neurochemical called oxytocin that is produced when we are trusted or shown a kindness, and it motivates us to cooperate with others. This article, based on scientific data, showed that people who engaged in listening or watching stories, consistently produced more oxytocin in their brains while engaging in the story.
What does this have to do with instructional design?
The experiment found that if the story created tension, then it's likely the listener will share the emotions of the character and remember those feelings and behaviors. Think about the last good movie you saw. Did you remember how the character felt, the issues they had to overcome, and the actions they took to overcome them in the movie?
Yes. I'm beginning to see your point. Stories engage your brain, and then you remember what happens.
Let's try to make this into a story where the main character is an air traffic controller who has a conflict to solve. Then we can have the learner help with the solution.
Okay, but I want the SMEs to sign off on this.
Absolutely. I don't want to put a lot of effort into this and have them say they aren't on board with it.
If we get them to sign off on the idea, we need to make a character the learner can relate to, and have them face a real job conflict. I will need to go back to the SMEs to get some more information on our audience.
Let me look through my files. I attended a workshop with a guy named Ranscreen on designing instruction using stories. I think I have some worksheets we can use to guide us in this story design process. I'll put them in our resources folder and number them in the order we should use them.
I looked through those worksheets you provided. They will be very helpful as we develop this lesson as a story.
We may not have to use all of them, but I think they will help us stay focused on the character and the story.
Click on the resources link at the top of the screen and you can access the resources as they are mentioned throughout the lesson, or you can print them to follow along and use.
I met with the SMEs and got them to sign off on the story idea.
Great. What did you do to convince them this was a better way to train?
I realized I had 4 choices to get them on board with the idea. Appeal to their intellect and share the neuroscience behind stories. Appeal to their emotions and tell a story of how instructional story design has been used successfully. Involve them in creating the story. Share quantitative and qualitative feedback. Unfortunately, we don't have any data to share. I figured the quickest way to get them on board was to involve them in creating the story. I'll show you how I got them involved. I showed the SMEs the first handout you provided in resources from Ranscreen's book, Instructional Story Design. This started the discussion. They started telling me some tarmac emergency stories and they helped me develop a character. Some of the stories were a little crazy, but they could see how the character's conflict in the story could connect to the action they desired in the learner after taking the training. We need to write the lesson so that the learner has a desire for resolution, and the actual training comes in the actions they take for resolution. I also shared this design continuum with the SMEs to help them see what learners want in training. As you can see, the emojis show how learners feel about each type of training design. The SMEs definitely want more demonstration and practice in this lesson, and they realized the story design would provide that. Here is the character the SMEs came up with based on the audience profile and character description worksheets I used with them. I had to really work with them to give me details, which is what makes the character more relatable. Dylan is a 31-year-old air traffic controller who has been at his job for 2 years. He likes his job, but doesn't like the stress and the night shifts. He lives in the suburbs of Baltimore and does his job well. He wants to move into management to make more money since he has 3 kids. His biggest fear is there will be an accident either mid-air or on the tarmac on his watch. The following scenario contains the story and the conflict that Dylan needs to resolve. Again, the more details, the more realistic the conflict. It's Friday afternoon, and Dylan has 2 737 jets that are landing within 10 minutes of each other. Delta Flight 3000 lands on runway 17, but 2 tires blow out on landing and the plane skidded off the runway in the snow. The emergency crews have been called and are on the tarmac. United Flight 280 is right behind Flight 3000, and there is no other runway available for landing.
We've got a great story premise with a character and a conflict. What do you think about having the learner reflect on how Dylan is feeling to really get them into the character?
Absolutely. If they can relate to how Dylan might be feeling, it will definitely give them a desire for resolution. Let's come up with some reflection questions.
How would you feel if you were Dylan?